The cargo ship Drifter's Hope looked like absolute garbage, and Marcus Chun loved it. He stood on the loading dock of Kepler Station, watching the auction crew prep his new vessel for transfer. Paint peeled from her hull in long strips. Scorch marks decorated her starboard side like battle scars. One of her 3 engines sputtered with an unhealthy wheeze that would cost him a fortune to fix. But she was his. "You sure about this, Marcus?" Tony Ricci asked, shaking his grease-stained head. "That bucket's gonna fall apart the moment you hit hyperspace." Marcus signed the transfer papers with shaking hands. 2 years of saving every credit, working double shifts hauling freight between the outer rim colonies, eating nothing but protein paste and recycled water. His entire life savings, 47,000 credits, now belonged to this beaten-up Corellian freighter. "She just needs some love," Marcus said, trying to convince himself as much as Tony. "Look at those cargo bays. Triple the capacity of my old hauler." Tony spat into a disposal chute. Cargo capacity don't mean nothing if the ship can't fly. And where'd this thing come from anyway? Auction house was real cagey about the previous owner. That had bothered Marcus too. Most ship auctions came with detailed histories, maintenance records, flight logs, previous registrations. The Drifter's Hope had arrived with nothing but a basic registration number and a note that the previous owner had defaulted on payments. No names, no records, no explanation for those scorch marks or the hastily welded patches along the lower hull. But Marcus needed this ship. His old hauler had finally died on him 3 months ago, leaving him stranded on Kepler Station with barely enough credits for food and lodging. Without a ship, he couldn't work. Without work, he'd end up like the other desperate souls haunting the station's lower levels, begging for passage off-world or selling whatever they had left to survive. "I'll manage," Marcus said, pocketing the ownership documents. "Thanks for witnessing the transfer, Tony." His friend grabbed his arm. "Just promise me you'll get her checked out before you take any long hauls. These auction ships sometimes come with surprises." Marcus nodded, but they both knew he couldn't afford a full inspection. He'd have to learn about any problems the hard way. 2 hours later, Marcus floated through the Drifter's Hope's main corridor, getting familiar with his new home. The artificial gravity worked, which was a good sign. Life support hummed steadily. The navigation computer booted up without catching fire. Maybe his luck was finally changing. The ship was bigger than anything he'd owned before. 3 cargo bays, crew quarters for 6, even a small medical bay. Way more space than a single freight hauler needed, but that just meant more room to grow his business. Maybe hire a crew eventually. Maybe even get into passenger transport. He was checking the first cargo bay when he heard it. A soft sound, barely audible over the ship's ambient noise, like someone trying very hard not to breathe too loudly. Marcus froze, his hand on the bay's control panel. Kepler Station had problems with stowaways. Desperate people looking for free passage to anywhere but here. The smart thing would be to call station security, let them handle it. But something about the sound made him hesitate. It wasn't the nervous breathing of someone trying to sneak a ride. It was careful, controlled, fearful. The breathing of someone hiding for their life. Marcus activated the bay's lighting system. Emergency floods blazed to life, revealing a cavernous space lined with cargo restraints and loading equipment. Empty shipping containers stacked along the walls. Standard freight hauler setup. The breathing stopped. "Hello," Marcus called out, keeping his voice gentle. "Look, I'm not going to hurt you. I just bought this ship. If you need help." A shipping container in the far corner shifted slightly, so slightly that Marcus almost missed it. He approached slowly, hands visible and empty. The container was standard issue. Nothing special about it except for the fresh scratches around the lock mechanism. Someone had opened it recently. "I'm going to open this container," Marcus said. "If you're in there, please don't do anything sudden. I just want to talk." His fingers found the container's release mechanism. The lock disengaged with a soft click. Marcus pulled the door open. 2 sets of eyes stared back at him from the darkness. Large, luminous eyes that reflected the bay's harsh lighting like mirrors. Not human eyes. The alien in front was clearly female, though her species was unlike anything Marcus had seen before. Tall and slender, with pale blue skin that seemed to shimmer in the light. Delicate features that might have been beautiful if not for the obvious exhaustion and fear etched into them. Her clothing was torn and stained, but had once been elegant. In her arms, she held a smaller version of herself. A child, no bigger than a human infant, with the same luminous eyes and shimmering skin. The little one made soft mewling sounds, like a kitten seeking comfort. Mother and child. Refugees. Hiding in his cargo bay like stowaways, but clearly running from something far worse than poverty. The mother alien spoke, her voice musical despite its obvious terror. The words were incomprehensible, but the meaning was universal. Please don't hurt us. Please don't turn us in. Please help. Marcus found himself nodding before he even realized what he was agreeing to. It's okay, he said, surprised by how steady his voice sounded. You're safe now. The alien mother didn't move from the container for nearly an hour. She simply stared at Marcus with those luminous eyes, holding her child close, as if waiting for him to reveal his true intentions. Marcus sat cross-legged on the cargo bay floor, speaking in gentle tones, offering water and food packets from his emergency supplies. Finally, hunger and thirst overcame fear. The mother emerged slowly, her movements graceful despite obvious exhaustion. She was taller than Marcus had first thought, nearly 7 feet when she stood fully upright. Her limbs were longer and more delicate than human proportions, but there was strength in her frame. Strength that had been pushed to its absolute limits. Marcus activated his ship's universal translator, hoping it would work with her language. The device hummed for several minutes, analyzing her speech patterns as she whispered to her child in soft, melodic tones. Please. The translator finally rendered her words. Do not send us back. They will kill us both. I won't send you anywhere, Marcus said. But I need to understand what's happening. Who wants to kill you? The alien mother's eyes filled with something that looked remarkably like tears. I am Zara of the Villani. This is my daughter, Kira. We fled from the burning worlds. Marcus felt his blood run cold. He'd heard rumors about the Villani conflict, whispered in freight hauler bars and trading posts, an entire species being systematically exterminated by corporate armies. Whole planets stripped of resources and left as scorched wastelands. But the news feeds called it a territorial dispute or resource management operation. Clean, sanitized language that hid the truth. The hegemony found our colony 3 cycles ago, Zara continued, her voice breaking. They said we were illegal settlers, that our people had no claim to worlds we had lived on for generations. When we refused to leave, she trailed off, pulling Kira closer. Marcus had seen enough war footage to fill in the gaps. Orbital bombardment, ground forces mopping up survivors. Standard corporate playbook when a species got in the way of profit margins. How did you escape? He asked. My mate, Jorik, was a ship engineer. He managed to get us aboard a refugee transport, but the hegemony intercepted us at the jump point. Most of the ships were destroyed. Ours crash-landed on a dead world. Zara's voice became barely a whisper. Jorik. He stayed behind to repair the engines. Told me to take Kira and hide in one of the escape pods. Said he would follow when the ship was ready. Marcus already knew how that story ended. But he didn't make it. The ship exploded as I watched from orbit. Jorik died so we could live. Tears flowed freely down Zara's face now. I drifted for days before a salvage crew found my pod. They brought me to Kepler Station, but they were not kind beings. They planned to sell us to hegemony bounty hunters. Bounty hunters? Zara nodded, her expression hardening. The hegemony pays well for captured Villani. We are worth more alive than dead. They use us for medical experiments. Our biology is useful to them. Marcus felt sick. He'd always known the galaxy was a harsh place, but this was something else entirely. Genocide dressed up as business. An entire species hunted for profit. The salvage crew made a mistake, Zara continued. They left me unguarded while they negotiated with buyers. I managed to escape with Kira, but we had nowhere to go. When I saw the ship being prepared for auction, I broke in and hid. I hoped whoever bought it would be traveling far from here. Why didn't you just book passage on a passenger transport? Zara's laugh was bitter. With what credits? And even if I had them, no transport captain would risk carrying Villani refugees. The hegemony has made it clear, anyone helping my people will be considered an enemy combatant. Marcus rubbed his temples, trying to process everything. He'd bought a ship to start a new life, and instead he'd inherited 2 alien refugees with death warrants on their heads. The smart thing, the safe thing, would be to turn them over to station security. Let someone else deal with this mess. But as he looked at little Kira, barely bigger than a human baby, sleeping peacefully in her mother's arms, Marcus knew he couldn't do it. Some lines couldn't be crossed, no matter what the cost. "Where were you trying to go?" he asked. "Anywhere beyond hegemony space. There are rumors of free colonies in the outer spiral, worlds where refugees can start over. But they are months away even at full hyperspace speeds." Marcus stood up, his decision crystallizing. "Then that's where we're going." Zara stared at him in disbelief. You would do this? Risk your life for strangers?" "You're not strangers anymore," Marcus said simply. "You're passengers. And passengers on my ship are under my protection." For the first time since he'd found them, Zara smiled. The expression transformed her entire face, revealing the beauty that exhaustion and fear had hidden. "You are a good being, Marcus Chin. The galaxy needs more like you." Marcus hoped she was right, because if they were caught, all 3 of them would discover just how cruel the galaxy could be. He spent the next 2 hours moving Zara and Kira to proper quarters, getting them food and medical supplies, and learning more about their situation. The Villani were herbivores, which made feeding them easier. Their atmospheric requirements were close enough to human standard that the ship's life support could handle them without modifications. Most importantly, Marcus learned about Villani biology. They were empathic to some degree, able to sense strong emotions in other species. It explained why Zara had known he meant no harm even before the translator came online. "Your feelings are bright," she explained. "Clean. Many beings we encountered had dark intentions clouding their thoughts. But yours shine with genuine kindness." It was a strange compliment, but Marcus found himself oddly touched by it. As evening ship time approached, Marcus began planning their departure. He'd already filed a flight plan for a standard freight run to the Centauri system, nothing that would attract attention. Once they were away from Kepler Station, he could alter course for the outer spiral. But as he ran through pre-flight checks, alarms began blaring throughout the station. Marcus rushed to the communications console, his heart sinking as he heard the announcement echoing through the docking bays. "Attention all vessels. Kepler Station is now under hegemony security protocols. No ships may depart without clearance from hegemony forces. Any vessel attempting to leave will be fired upon. This is for the safety and security of all station inhabitants." Through the viewport, Marcus could see military ships taking position around the station. Sleek, predatory vessels bristling with weapons. The hegemony had found them. Marcus killed the ship's external lights and sealed the airlock, his hands moving with practiced efficiency born of 2 decades hauling freight through dangerous space. But this was different. Pirates and raiders were business risks. The hegemony was a death sentence. "They cannot have tracked us here," Zara whispered from the corridor entrance. Little Kira clutched against her chest. "I was so careful." "Maybe they didn't need to track you," Marcus said, pulling up the station security feeds on his console. "Maybe they're here for something else entirely." But even as he said it, Marcus knew he was lying to himself. 3 hegemony destroyers didn't lock down an entire station for routine business. They were hunting. The security feeds showed hegemony troops pouring into the station's main docking bays. Full combat armor, plasma rifles, scanning equipment. They moved with the mechanical precision of soldiers who had done this many times before. "Attention drifters, hope." A cold voice crackled over the communications array. "This is Commander Voss of the Hegemony Security Force. You will prepare for immediate boarding and inspection. Marcus's finger hovered over the communication switch. Every instinct screamed at him to comply, to open his airlocks and let them search. He was just a freight hauler. He had nothing to hide. Except he did now. Drifter's Hope, you have 30 seconds to respond or we will assume hostile intent. Zara appeared at his shoulder, her empathic abilities apparently picking up his internal struggle. Do not sacrifice yourself for us, Marcus Chen. We have lived as refugees. We can do so again. Like hell, Marcus muttered, and activated the ship's emergency departure sequence. The Drifter's Hope had been built for quick escapes from pirate attacks. Her engines might wheeze and complain, but they could still push her away from a docking clamp faster than most security forces expected. Warning lights bathed the bridge in red as the ship's automated systems began the undocking process. All ships, Drifter's Hope is attempting unauthorized departure. Commander Voss's voice cut through the comm static. Intercept and disable. Marcus threw power to the engines and felt the familiar lurch as artificial gravity struggled to compensate. Through the viewport, he could see other ships in the docking bay scrambling to get out of his path. A cargo hauler like his wasn't supposed to launch this aggressively. Why are you doing this? Zara asked, strapping herself into the co-pilot's seat. Your species has no obligation to protect mine. Marcus didn't have a good answer for that. Maybe it was growing up poor on Earth's factory stations, watching corporate security brutalize anyone who stepped out of line. Maybe it was 20 years of seeing what happened to the weak and defenseless in the galaxy's darker corners. Or maybe it was something simpler, the way little Kira had looked at him with those luminous eyes, trusting and innocent. Hold on, he said instead, and pushed the engines past their safety limits. The Drifter's Hope shot out of Kepler Station like a cork from a bottle, her overtaxed engines throwing sparks and warnings across every system display. Behind them, the hegemony destroyers were already moving to intercept, their sleek forms cutting through space with predatory grace. Marcus had one advantage. His ship was small and maneuverable. The destroyers were built for overwhelming firepower, not dogfighting with civilian freighters. If he could reach the hyperspace jump point before they got a target lock. Incoming transmission, the ship's computer announced. Drifter's Hope, this is your final warning. Cut engines and prepare to be boarded, or we will open fire. Marcus looked at his sensor display. The nearest destroyer was still 2 minutes away from weapons range. The hyperspace jump point was 90 seconds at current speed. It would be close but possible. Then his blood ran cold as new contacts appeared on the screen. 2 more hegemony ships, smaller and faster than the destroyers. Interceptor class. They'd been waiting in ambush, hidden behind Kepler Station's sensor shadow. I don't suppose your people have any defensive technology one should know about? Marcus asked Zara. We are not a warrior species, she replied sadly. We build, we grow, we create beauty. We do not make weapons. The first plasma bolts streaked past the Drifter's Hope, close enough to rattle her hull plating. Warning shots, but the next volley would be aimed to disable. Marcus yanked the ship into a spiraling evasive pattern, using every trick he'd learned dodging pirates in the outer systems. But the hegemony pilots were good. Better than pirates. Their next shots clipped the Drifter's Hope's starboard engine, sending the ship into an uncontrolled tumble. Hull breach in Cargo Bay 2. The computer reported with infuriating calm. Life support failure in 30 minutes. Marcus fought to regain control, but the damaged engine was throwing off his ship's balance. Every maneuver became a struggle against physics and failing systems. The interceptors closed in like sharks sensing blood. We're not going to make it, he said, more to himself than to Zara. That's when little Kira began to sing. It wasn't words, just a melody that seemed to resonate through the ship's hull itself. A hauntingly beautiful sound that made Marcus's chest tighten with emotions he couldn't name. Hope, determination, the fierce love of a parent for a child. But it was more than that. As Kira sang, Marcus felt something change in his perception. The chaos of combat slowed, became clearer. He could see the interceptors' attack patterns, predict their movements with uncanny accuracy. His hands moved across the controls with newfound precision, threading the drifter's hope through spaces that should have been impossible to navigate. "What is she doing?" Marcus asked. "Kira has the gift," Zara said, tears streaming down her face. "She can touch the harmony that connects all living things. Your species calls it intuition, but for us it is much more." Marcus didn't pretend to understand, but he could feel it working. Every dodge, every course correction felt perfectly timed. The hegemony pilots were skilled, but they were fighting against something beyond their comprehension. The hyperspace jump point grew larger on his display. 60 seconds. 40. 20. "Drifter's hope, cut engines now or we will destroy you." Commander Voss's voice cut through Kira's song. Marcus looked at Zara, at the hope shining in her luminous eyes, at the baby who had somehow given them all a fighting chance. "Not today," he said, and engaged the hyperspace drive. The stars stretched into lines of light, and Kepler Station vanished behind them. They were free, for now. 3 days into hyperspace, Marcus discovered that freedom was a relative concept. He floated in the Drifter's Hope's cramped engineering section, trying to patch the damage from their escape while the ship hurtled through the void between stars. The starboard engine was barely holding together, held in place by emergency welds and desperate prayers. Worse, the hyperspace drive was operating far beyond safe parameters. Every hour they stayed in hyperspace brought them closer to a catastrophic system failure. "How much further?" Zara asked from the engineering bay entrance, little Kira sleeping peacefully in her arms. Marcus wiped sweat and grease from his forehead. "At this rate, maybe 2 more days before the drive burns out completely. That'll put us in the Vega system, still 3 jumps short of the outer spiral." And then, Marcus didn't want to answer that question. Without hyperspace capability, they'd be trapped in normal space, easy prey for any hegemony patrol that happened to be in the area. His ship's sublight engines could barely push them between planets, let alone star systems. "We'll figure something out," he said, trying to sound more confident than he felt. Zara's empathic abilities made lying to her difficult. She tilted her head, studying his emotional state with those luminous eyes. "You are afraid." "Terrified," Marcus admitted. "I'm a freight hauler, not a military strategist. I have no idea how to keep us alive out here. Yet you continue trying. Why?" Marcus paused in his welding, considering the question. 3 days ago, his biggest worry had been making enough credits to keep his ship running. Now he was a fugitive from the galaxy's most powerful military force, responsible for the lives of 2 alien refugees he barely knew. "Because it's the right thing to do," he said finally. "And because someone has to stand up to bastards like the hegemony." Zara smiled, an expression that still caught Marcus off guard with its beauty. "Your species fascinates me. Individually, humans can be cruel, selfish, violent. But in moments of crisis, you often choose compassion over self-preservation. It is inspiring." "Don't give us too much credit," Marcus said. "Most humans would have turned you over to save their own skins. Perhaps, but you did not. And neither did the human who helped us before." Marcus looked up from his work. "What human?" "At Kepler Station. A woman named Sarah Martinez. She worked in the auction house where your ship was being sold. When she learned we were hiding aboard, she could have reported us. Instead, she altered the ship's records to make it appear as if the cargo hold had been fully inspected and cleared. The name meant nothing to Marcus, but he filed it away. If they survived this, he owed Sarah Martinez a debt he could never repay. "There are more like her," Zara continued. "Humans who see injustice and choose to fight it, even at great personal cost. It gives me hope for both our species." Marcus was about to respond when alarms began blaring throughout the ship. He pushed off from the engineering bay walls, floating quickly toward the bridge with Zara close behind. The hyperspace tunnel outside the viewport was flickering, reality bleeding through in disturbing patches of normal space. The ship's navigation computer was scrolling error messages faster than Marcus could read them. "What's happening?" Zara asked. "Hyperspace cascade failure," Marcus said, his hands flying over the emergency controls. "The drive is burning out faster than I calculated. We need to drop to normal space immediately or the ship will tear itself apart. Marcus initiated emergency drop procedures, and the universe snapped back into focus around them. Stars replaced the swirling tunnel of hyperspace, and the ship's stress systems finally began to stabilize. But their relief was short-lived. Multiple contacts, the ship's computer announced. Configuration suggests military vessels. Marcus's heart sank as 6 ships appeared on his sensor display. Hegemony interceptors, spread in a perfect search pattern across the system. They'd been waiting. How did they know we'd drop here? Marcus asked. Zara's face had gone pale. Hyperspace routes are predictable, and the hegemony has had much practice hunting my people through the void. The nearest interceptor was already changing course toward them, its sensors no doubt picking up the drifter's Hope's energy signature. Within minutes, all 6 ships would converge on their position. Marcus studied his tactical display, looking for options that didn't exist. His ship was damaged, his weapons were civilian-grade mining lasers, and his engines could barely maintain orbit around a planet, let alone outrun military interceptors. Can Kira do what she did before? He asked desperately. Zara shook her head. The gift requires great concentration and energy. She is still recovering from our escape at Kepler Station. And she is so young. The baby in question was awake now, her luminous eyes wide with apparent understanding of their situation. She made soft cooing sounds, reaching toward the viewport as if trying to touch the stars beyond. Incoming transmission, the computer announced. Drifter's Hope, this is Captain Torres of the HCS Retribution. You are surrounded and have no chance of escape. Surrender the Villani refugees and you will be allowed to go free. Marcus almost laughed at the absurdity of it, as if the hegemony had ever kept promises to civilians who got in their way. What do we do? Zara asked. Marcus looked at the tactical display again, his mind racing through possibilities. 6 ships. No way to outrun them. No way to outfight them. But maybe... How well do you know Villani history? He asked suddenly. I was a teacher before the war. History and cultural studies. Why? Your people must have legends, stories about great heroes or impossible victories. Something that might inspire others. Zara's expression grew puzzled. Many stories, but I do not understand. Trust me, Marcus said, opening a wideband communication channel, not just to the hegemony ships but to every receiver in the system. I need you to tell one of those stories. Make it beautiful. Make it inspiring. Make people remember why your species deserves to survive. Understanding dawned in Zara's eyes. You want to broadcast our story? Your story. Kira's story. The truth about what the hegemony is doing to your people. Let the galaxy hear it from someone who lived it. Marcus activated the ship's emergency beacon, designed to call for help in case of disaster. Instead, he was using it to send a message that would be picked up by every ship, station, and settlement within 50 light-years. Drifter's Hope, cut your transmission immediately, Captain Torres ordered. Any further attempts to broadcast will be met with lethal force. Then you'd better make it count, Marcus told Zara. She nodded, understanding the sacrifice he was asking her to make. To stand before the galaxy as a witness to genocide, knowing it would make her an even bigger target than she already was. Zara began to speak, her musical voice carrying across the void with the power of absolute truth. She told of worlds burning, of children crying for parents who would never come home, of a species scattered to the winds by corporate greed disguised as policy. But more than that, she spoke of hope, of humans like Marcus who chose compassion over safety, of the possibility that different species could find common ground among the stars. As she spoke, little Kira began to sing again, her infant voice weaving through her mother's words like a melody of pure innocence. The combination was heartbreaking and beautiful and impossible to ignore. Marcus watched his sensor display as the hegemony ships closed in, their weapons charging for the kill. But he also watched the communication logs as their broadcasts spread across the system, picked up and retransmitted by civilian vessels and automated beacons. The truth was spreading, and sometimes that was victory enough. The plasma bolt that should have destroyed the drifter's hope never came. Marcus stared at his sensor display in disbelief as the hegemony interceptors suddenly broke formation, wheeling away from attack runs to face a new threat. Ships were dropping out of hyperspace all around them, dozens of vessels of every size and configuration imaginable. Freight haulers like Marcus's own ship, passenger liners, mining vessels, even a few corporate security ships flying independent colors. "What's happening?" Zara asked, still holding Kira close as the baby's song faded to gentle humming. Marcus checked the communication logs, his eyes widening as he saw the flood of responses to their broadcast. Messages from across the system, across the sector, all saying the same thing in different ways. "We hear you. We're coming." "Your story," Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion. "It's spreading. People are responding." The first ship to reach them was a battered cargo hauler called the Lucky Strike, her captain's voice crackling over the comm with a thick outer rim accent. "Drifter's Hope, this is Captain Rodriguez. We heard your broadcast. Nobody deserves what these hegemony bastards are doing to your people." More voices joined in as the civilian fleet took position around Marcus's ship. Miners from the asteroid belts, traders from the free colonies, even a luxury yacht whose owner apparently had more conscience than sense. "HCS Retribution, this is the merchant vessel Prosperity," came another voice. "You are outnumbered 12 to 1. I suggest you reconsider your current course of action." Captain Torres's response was predictably aggressive. "All civilian vessels withdraw immediately. This is a hegemony security operation. Any interference will be considered an act of war." "Then I guess we're at war," Captain Rodriguez replied cheerfully. "Boys, let's show these corporate thugs what free spacers think of their security operations." What followed wasn't really a battle. The civilian ships were no match for military interceptors in terms of firepower or armor. But they had numbers, and more importantly, they were fighting for something they believed in. The hegemony pilots, for all their training and equipment, were just following orders. Marcus found himself in the middle of the strangest space engagement he'd ever witnessed. Mining ships using their or cutters as weapons. Passenger liners forming protective shields around the smaller vessels. Cargo haulers like his own ramming hegemony interceptors at full speed. Their crews willing to sacrifice everything to protect two alien refugees they'd never met. "This is incredible," Zara whispered, watching the tactical display as ship after ship joined the growing fleet. "They are risking their lives for strangers." "Welcome to humanity," Marcus said. "We're not always smart, but we're stubborn as hell when we think something's right." The tide turned when the corporate security ship Independence arrived with a full complement of military-grade weapons. Her captain, a former hegemony officer named Chun Wei, had apparently heard enough about Villani genocide to switch sides. "HCS Retribution, this is Chun Wei of the Independence. I served with you at Proxima Station, Torres. You were a good soldier then. Don't let them turn you into a monster now." The hegemony formation began to waver. These weren't pirates or rebels they were facing, but ordinary citizens defending innocent refugees. The optics were terrible, and every moment of the engagement was being broadcast across the galaxy by the civilian ship's emergency beacons. "Stand down, Wei," Captain Torres replied, but there was uncertainty in his voice now. "You're making a mistake." "The mistake was following orders to hunt down children," Chen Wei shot back. "How many more planets are you going to help them burn? How many more species are you going to help them exterminate?" Marcus could see the exact moment when Captain Torres realized he'd lost. Not just the battle, but the war for public opinion. The hegemony's carefully crafted narrative about territorial disputes and resource management was crumbling in real time, replaced by the image of military forces attacking civilian refugees. "All hegemony vessels withdraw to jump point Beta," Torres ordered. "We'll continue this discussion with headquarters." As the interceptors retreated, the civilian fleet erupted in cheers. Ships flashed their running lights in celebration, and the communication channels filled with congratulations and offers of assistance. But Marcus knew the celebration was premature. They'd won a single engagement, not the war. The hegemony would be back with heavier ships and clearer orders. Next time, they might not hesitate to fire on civilian vessels. Drifters Hope, this is Captain Rodriguez. We need to get you folks somewhere safe while we figure out next steps. You got a destination in mind? Marcus looked at Zara, who was still staring at the tactical display in wonder. The outer spiral colonies, he said. Free worlds, beyond hegemony reach. That's a long haul, especially with your ship shot up like it is. But I know some folks who can help. Follow my beacon, we're going to New Haven Station. They've got repair facilities and people who know how to keep refugees safe. As the civilian fleet formed up around the Drifter's Hope, Marcus felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Hope, not just for Zara and Kira's survival, but for something bigger. The broadcast had shown the galaxy what the hegemony really was, stripped away the corporate doublespeak to reveal the genocide beneath. Your species continues to surprise me, Zara said, settling into the co-pilot seat as Marcus prepared to follow Captain Rodriguez's ship. I did not expect such unity among strangers. We're not all strangers, Marcus replied. Some of us just hadn't met yet. Little Kira had fallen asleep during the battle, apparently untroubled by the violence swirling around her. But even in sleep, she hummed softly, that same haunting melody that had helped them escape Kepler Station. The sound of hope made audible. As they jumped to hyperspace surrounded by their unlikely escort, Marcus began to understand what Zara had meant about the harmony connecting all living things. It wasn't mystical or magical. It was simply recognition that all life had value, that the strong had a duty to protect the weak, that justice was worth fighting for regardless of the cost. The hegemony had made a critical error in hunting Zara and Kira so publicly. They'd given the galaxy a face to put on their crimes, a story that couldn't be buried in corporate propaganda. And sometimes one story was enough to change everything. The Drifter's Hope might be damaged and her crew might be refugees, but they were no longer alone. Across human space, people were hearing Zara's testimony and making the same choice Marcus had made in that cargo hold, to stand up for what was right no matter the consequences. The war against the hegemony had begun not with military strikes or political maneuvering, but with a simple act of compassion. And that, Marcus thought, was the most human thing of all. 6 months later, Marcus stood on the observation deck of Harmony Station, watching construction crews put the finishing touches on humanity's first joint xenological research facility. The station orbited a blue-green world in the outer spiral, far from hegemony space, where refugees from a dozen species had found sanctuary among the free colonies. Zara appeared beside him, moving with that same graceful silence that had first surprised him in the cargo hold. But she looked different now, stronger, healthier, dressed in the flowing robes of a Villani cultural ambassador rather than the torn clothing of a desperate refugee. The medical bay is ready, she said, her voice carrying satisfaction and pride. Dr. Martinez says it's the most advanced xenological facility in the sector. Marcus smiled. Sarah Martinez, the auction house worker who had helped hide Zara's presence aboard the Drifter's Hope, had turned out to be a brilliant xenobiologist working undercover to document hegemony war crimes. When the story broke, she'd been one of the first to join the growing resistance movement. And Kira? Marcus asked. Growing faster than I can keep up with, Zara laughed. She wants to learn human languages now, especially the technical terms. I think she may become an engineer like her father. They watched through the viewport as little Kira floated in the station's central garden, her luminous eyes wide with wonder as she studied the exotic plants that refugees from across the galaxy had brought to their new home. She was bigger now, more active, but she still hummed that haunting melody whenever she was particularly happy. The hegemony response came through this morning, Marcus said, his tone growing serious. They're calling us terrorists, claiming we're spreading anti-human propaganda and destabilizing interstellar commerce. Zara's expression darkened. And the human colonial authority? Split down the middle. The outer colonies are backing us, but the core worlds are still hedging their bets. Too much corporate influence in the inner systems. It had been a complicated 6 months. The broadcast from the Drifter's Hope had indeed sparked a galaxy-wide movement, but it had also triggered a vicious backlash from hegemony-aligned forces. Refugee camps had been bombed. Ships carrying aid to Volani survivors had been disappeared by corporate security forces. 3 independent journalists investigating hegemony war crimes had been found dead under suspicious circumstances. But the resistance was growing. Every act of hegemony brutality created new converts to the cause. Every refugee who reached safety became a witness to genocide. Every human who chose compassion over profit became a beacon of hope for the oppressed. Captain Chun. A young voice interrupted Marcus's thoughts. He turned to see Tommy Rodriguez, Captain Rodriguez's teenage son, floating toward them with the easy grace of someone born in space. The council meeting is starting. They want you and Ambassador Zara in the conference room. Marcus nodded, then paused as he realized what the boy had called him. Captain. Tommy grinned. Come on, you've got to accept it eventually. Half the resistance fleet follows your lead, and the other half wants to. You're not just a freight hauler anymore. It was true, though Marcus still felt uncomfortable with the title. In the months since their escape from Kepler Station, his role had evolved from refugee protector to resistance coordinator to something approaching military commander. The Drifter's Hope had been repaired and upgraded, turned into a command vessel for covert operations against hegemony shipping. Marcus had never asked for the responsibility, but the movement needed leaders, and sometimes leadership chose you rather than the other way around. The conference room was crowded with representatives from across the resistance network. Captain Rodriguez, looking older but more determined than ever. Dr. Martinez, her scientific credentials lending weight to testimony about hegemony atrocities. Chun Wei, whose defection from hegemony forces had inspired dozens of other military officers to switch sides. And dozens of others, humans, Volani, and representatives from 3 other refugee species that had fled hegemony expansion. The situation on Kepler Station has deteriorated, Dr. Martinez was saying as Marcus and Zara took their seats. Hegemony forces have implemented martial law. Anyone suspected of sympathizing with refugees is being detained indefinitely. What about our people still there? Asked Captain Rodriguez. Most got out when the crackdown started. But Sarah Kim and her network are still operating underground, helping refugees escape the inner systems. Marcus felt a familiar weight settle on his shoulders. Every day brought reports like this, brave people risking everything to help others, while the hegemony tightened its grip on the core worlds. The resistance had saved thousands of lives, but millions more remained in danger. We need to do more than just evacuate refugees, said Chinwei. The hegemony is using our success against us, claiming that the refugee crisis proves non-human species are inherently destabilizing. We need to show the galaxy that coexistence is possible. Which brings us to the main agenda item, Marcus said, activating the conference room's holographic display. Zara, would you do the honors? Zara stood, her presence commanding immediate attention from everyone in the room. Over the past months, she had become more than just a symbol of Volani suffering. She had become a voice for all the displaced, all the hunted, all those who dreamed of a galaxy where might didn't make right. Ladies, gentlemen, and honored beings, she began, her musical voice carrying clearly through the room's translation systems. 6 months ago, my daughter and I were hiding in a cargo container, waiting to die. Today, we stand before you as free beings in a station built by the combined efforts of 17 different species. This transformation did not happen by accident. It happened because one human freight hauler chose compassion over safety. She gestured toward Marcus, who felt his cheeks burn with embarrassment. But Marcus Chen's choice was not unique. Across the galaxy, humans have made similar choices. Captain Rodriguez risked his ship to protect strangers. Dr. Martinez abandoned her career to document our suffering. Chun Wei turned against his own military to defend the innocent. Each choice seemed small at the time, but together they have created something unprecedented. A truly interstellar community based on mutual respect and shared values. The holographic display came alive, showing construction plans for something that took Marcus's breath away. Not just a space station, but an entire orbital city. Docking bays designed for ships from dozens of different species. Living quarters adapted for various atmospheric and gravitational requirements. Research laboratories, cultural centers, schools where human and alien children could learn together. We call it the Harmony Project, Zara continued. A permanent home for refugees, but more than that, a demonstration that different species can not only coexist, but thrive together. The hegemony claims that diversity breeds chaos. We will prove them wrong. The room erupted in excited chatter as the implications sank in. This wasn't just another refugee camp or temporary sanctuary. This was a statement to the galaxy that there was an alternative to hegemony rule. The engineering challenges are significant, Chunwei noted, studying the specifications. We'll need resources, specialized construction equipment, personnel with xenological expertise, all of which we have pledged to provide, said a new voice from the conference room entrance. Marcus turned to see Admiral Helena Cross, the highest-ranking hegemony defector yet to join their cause. Her arrival had been kept secret until now, but her presence changed everything. Admiral, Marcus said, standing in surprise, I thought you were still on Proxima Station. Cross smiled grimly. I was until this morning, when Hegemony Command ordered me to begin final pacification of the remaining Villani colonies. I decided it was time to make my position clear. She activated her personal communicator, and the display filled with technical readouts. I've brought detailed intelligence on Hegemony fleet movements, defensive positions, and something even more valuable, the location of their primary detention facility, where they're holding captured Villani for medical experimentation. The room fell silent. Everyone knew what this meant. They weren't just building a sanctuary anymore. They were planning a rescue mission that would put them in direct military conflict with the galaxy's most powerful force. Little Kira chose that moment to float into the conference room, her luminous eyes taking in the adult conversation with obvious curiosity. She had grown so much in 6 months, but she was still small enough to sit comfortably in Marcus's lap when he scooped her up. What do you think, little one? He asked her quietly. Ready for another adventure? Kira looked up at him with those ancient, knowing eyes and began to hum her melody of hope.